Hello, hello. That basis. Thank you all for joining Advertising Matters Views from the Frontline. We were floored last week to be booked out. And in fact, we had an approval poll rating of 103%, which is pretty Irish and pretty good because more people liked the Zoominar than actually attended it. I don't know how that happens, but it did. The first thing to say is, as you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is about a sense of community. I say it every week, but I was there in the 2010 crash. I do understand the emotional issues. I do understand the family issues. I most certainly do, even today, understand the financial issues from experience. So if I can help you, please don't hesitate. But we're trying to build a community here. So if you have anything to say or to advertise, just send it in. I will shamelessly read out any blatant ads here. Our rate card is 0, but if you send them in programmatically, we'll take a 49% margin without you knowing about it. I'll also forward them to Siobhan and to John and to Mags and to Pat, or as needs be. There are good people up here, so they will be very happy to help you. I'm Stuart Fogarty of Admatic, AdTech, Streamabout, the video agency, and AFAO'Meara advertising. My job today is just to facilitate this discussion, try and keep it going and keep it good. Admatic builds self-op media booking engines for direct business. Streamabout does video, and we're out filming today, which is the first time in weeks, and please God, that's a bit of a sign. And AFAO'Meara advertising does absolutely nothing at the moment, but there you go. Hopefully we get over that. It's very much appreciated that you're here. Hope it's a benefit. Thanks for being here. We'll be over in 1 hour. And I just need to say a warning to people that we are recording us, because I know you can see it in your screen, not you. So we can't see you and we can't hear you, and we can't see the shelf of well-stocked library books that you've borrowed either. But just so that you know, it's only us that's been recorded. It's not you. I also do a poll at the end to see what you thought of it. And if the results are good, I share them. And if they're not, I won't. And as you can see, I'm here again in the advertising jungle here in our offices. So that all said, joining us live from LA weekly is Siobhan O'Connell, former media and advertising journalist with the Irish Times and indeed with the Business Post, but more importantly, a co-founder of the great Business Plus monthly magazine, Ireland's largest circulation monthly magazine. I just do say this, and I'm going to say it again till you're all sick to hear me. Go out and buy a copy, despite the fact that I'm in it, because if you want to support Irish media owners and you want to support Irish advertising, that's an easy way to do it. So there's another ad. Adworld and IMJ also support these sessions from the start and have done. So we have with us the great John McGee, or his online persona is Jack, who's the CEO of Irish Marketing Journal, IMJ, Adworld.ie, and I think was the CEO of Business of Finance some time ago. Margaret Mags Nelson is the CEO of FM104 and Q102, which is part of the Wireless Group, which is ultimately part of News Corp, and joins us live from her real home in Baltimore, County Cork. Pat Kiely is the outgoing CEO of Virgin Media Television and was formerly, in fact, when I knew him, on the agency side with Saatchi's and with DD, so a bit of a poacher gamekeeper there. And joins us live from another fresh round of interviews. Very welcome, one and all. So we'll start with Mags, if you don't mind, Mags. How are things in Radio Land? What's local radio looking like at the moment, and what about the future? You're muted. No, we can't hear you, Mags. You're on mute. Something has happened there. Well, don't worry. Hold it for a second while you try and sort that out. Mr. Kiely, you know Mags.
Mr. Fogarty.
You met Mags for the first time, I think it was last year, was it?
No.
Oh, she's back.
Go on, you tell him. You're back, Mags.
Go on, you tell him, Mags.
Okay, so Pat Kiely and I know each other for, I'd say, 30 years. So we'll go on a different story on that. But first of all, hello, and it's so lovely to be able to connect with everybody and talk to everybody, because I feel I'm a little bit disjointed down here in West Cork. Just to give you an idea, or give you a flavour for why I'm here, it's purely personal. So the schools were locked down on the Thursday, I think the possibly 10th or 14th or something of March. So we met my daughter's doing her leaving cert, or was due to do her leaving cert. So we decided to, we bought an old house, new to us, but an old house in West Cork. So we decided to come down for a couple of days just to close down the old house, give my daughter a bit of time, our daughter a bit of time to relate to the fact that the schools were closed down. And then we got locked down. So we came down here, guys, for 5-6 days, and that's 8.5 weeks ago. Wow. So we're still here. But isn't it amazing that you can still run 2 Dublin radio stations from West Cork?
And how are the 2 Dublin radio stations doing, Mags? How are we getting on? Revenue-wise, listener-wise, all of that stuff.
Well, Stuart, they're doing brilliantly, because, I mean, anybody who knows me, I suppose, won't be surprised with the fact that I think that I've got 2 amazing teams of people that are back in Dublin doing what they're doing. And, you know, like any CEO or, you know, leader or boss person or whatever, the best thing that we can do is to facilitate, well, I suppose, to acknowledge what we're good at and to acknowledge what we're not good at, and to facilitate our teams to do the best that they can do. Now, there has never been a more challenging time than the pandemic to show this, because all of a sudden I'm turning around to my teams and I'm saying, guys, I want you to build your listeners, I want you to do what you do, and I want you to do it out of Mac and House. So I think I said this to Stuart and Pat earlier when we were chatting. I think I'm probably I think a lot of the radio stations are broadcasting outside of their, you know, from home. But I don't know if all of them are broadcasting all of the shows, whereas FM 104 and Q102, all of them are broadcasting out from their homes. And just to give you a flavour of that, for something like the Strawberry Alarm Clock, so we have Mark Noble broadcasting from Malahide, Jim Nugent broadcasting from Greystones, Terry, who's doing the media inserts, is from Clane, County Kildare. Olivia is answering the phones from Sandyford, from her own house, you know, and Crossy is pulling it all together. So if you listen to a link in the Strawberry Alarm Clock and all of them are all chatting away and talking, you'd think they were all sitting in the one room, and yet they're all broadcasting from different places. So never before has it been more challenging for the teams to step up to the mark, but they've all done that, and they're just brilliant. So none of us broadcast from Mac and House at the moment. They're all broadcasting from home, including Q102.
And tell us, Max, how's the ad revenue doing? I mean, tell us what you want to tell us, but how good or bad is it?
Am I allowed to use a rude word?
Yes, you are. Go on, use it.
I'm not going to, but it's shite.
Right. Okay.
We're getting quite a bit of revenue from as all media are from Office of an Taoiseach. But because businesses are closed, Stuart, they can't advertise.
Well,
they won't advertise.
They've nothing to say, and they've no money to say it, and that's the problem, really, isn't it?
Well, you know, to be honest, if I had a different hat on me, Stuart, and if I had Mags Nelson Garden Centre or Mags Nelson fitness routine or fitness outfits or whatever, I would be using this opportunity. And I'm not just saying this to the forum because we're all advertisers, but I would be using this forum, even if my doors were closed as a retailer, to really, really build my brand. Because radio, TV, you know, the listenership and their viewership, and I don't know, Pat, I'm sure you'll be able to contest this as well, or to be able to verify this, but it's never been higher, Stuart. Never. My numbers are ginormous, so going through the roof. But clients are just being a bit precautious, and they're being a bit, you know, my doors are closed, so I can't spend I can't spend my marketing money. And I understand that, because they're looking at salaries and they're looking at, they can't do this.
Correct.
But if I had a different hat on, I genuinely would be looking to build my brand at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's true. And agencies have always said that brands that advertise in a recession are more likely to come out on top at the end of the recession. But it's easy to say that if you're a business and you're talking about making redundancies or letting people go or cutting salaries, you know, you don't have the money to advertise as such. Mr. Kiely, we'll turn to you if we could.
Mm.
Just you give us a view on similarly TV under pressure and also the COVID-19 crisis kind of cut around your departure, really, I suppose, in some ways, or your
A perfectly timed run.
How is Virgin Media? How is All Sail in her?
Good. Yeah, look, business is in remarkably good shape, I have to say. Maybe jumping off the back of what Mags has just said, viewership at an all-time high. I called it to the team when it first happened. There's like going to be an extended Christmas, because what Mags has just described is a classic business issue of supply and demand. We have extraordinary supply of audience, but no demand. So can we, what would a normal business do? Would they warehouse? Would they discount? There's all those challenges. But at Christmas, I think most people on this webinar would be aware, not unlike ITV, unlike commercial broadcasters around the world, when audiences are at an all-time high, commercial broadcasters typically underinvest because the advertising demand isn't there. So I guess, look, the business is in great shape. One or two data points on that: viewership TV is up about 15% at the moment. Really powerful opportunities for marketeers like shared viewing. So mums watching content with their kids is up 25%. So, we were talking before we went live, weren't we, about those wonderful moments of having more lunches and dinners with the kids and stuff. And a lot of stuff is taking place in front of the TV. So you've got the quantity going up, but also the quality and those special moments growing. Let's get back to the reality check that, not unlike previous challenges, the ad market just pretty much closed down on us. But yeah, back to your point. Look, for most people are aware, I'm leaving the business this summer. I guess after 22 years, I can't be accused of running out of the place. But what seemed like a perfectly timed run, kind of 5 years into the MD role, having kind of really done the large part of what that job was all about, which was kind of rebranding the business and integrating to part of the brilliant business that is Virgin Media in terms of the connected entertainment business. Yeah, I was reflecting on Mag's dates. I'll tell you the date. It was Thursday, March the 12th, the Taoiseach got to his feet in New York to close the schools down. Because guess what? I had a town hall of 200 people to come into Studio 2 in Ballyman to tell them I was leaving the business on March the 13th. So on March the 12th, I had to put that on hold. So to that end, what did we do? We quickly realizing, I obviously put, my position on hold and doubled down on what had to be done. And the great thing about that 22-year story of the business was, within our business, there's fantastic, crisis DNA. The guys have been, for the guys who've been there from the very start, the business wasn't given a chance at the start and was written off probably, 5 or 6 times over that period. So what I found was, brilliantly, everybody jumped into, crisis mode. And what I think, looking back on what worked brilliantly for us in those initial moments, was just staying connected, talking to everybody. When my experience of previous moments where we were being written off was get out there, talk to people, get everybody's view. We got, like Mags, not quite 100%, but we got 80% of people off site. We did things like separated news reporters, made sure they never met up together, and put some transmission people in isolation so that should everyone else get sick, we'd have people to call in. We finally decoupled Matt and Ivan, and they do alternate nights. But what was fantastic was seeing a model. We were very lucky, and I guess that's in essence why the business is in good shape, for 2 reasons. One is, for many years we've been working towards, what would happen in terms of this if the ad market showed up with another big challenge. And essentially selling the business to Virgin Media was very much part of that, because that one transaction forever protected the Virgin Media television business from ever having to worry that an ad recession would take it down like it nearly did previously. But also the strategy, investing, we turned something on its head in the last 5 years. We started to recognize that Irish content and news and current affairs was a privilege and an honor, and a real opportunity, not a tax and not an obligation. And that has served us incredibly well. So we immediately dialed up the amount of news and current affairs we're doing, the amount of locally relevant content. And we had to, because guess what? We had less Coronation Streets, less, and that sounds familiar because we were there before. It was great. The live and local broadcasting model served us incredibly well. And we have another side to that equation, which I might talk about later, which is our global content ambition. But in the short term, the strategy really served us well. So look, I'm conscious that a lot of people on this call, a lot of people are, you know, in much more tricky situations and difficult circumstances. And certainly we at Virgin Media and Virgin Media Television would like to offer our help as well. And I think we're launching over the next couple of days a backing business initiative which will do that, because we are very lucky that a huge part of our business is in one of those sectors that's performing particularly well, and that's connected.
Yeah, I also think, Pat, as well, and much like Mags, you also have parents with deep pockets, so you're very resilient businesses, and I think that's in the market. That's the place to be, you know.
Could I just challenge that? Sorry, Stuart.
Because
you know, that's been said before, and it's typically come up in a conversation when we talk about the Virgin Media television model versus an RT model. I think everyone on this call will recognise that parents with deep pockets don't, you know, support businesses that deliver returns. And I think the business, to be fair to the Virgin Media Television team, it has always been a profitable business, and it remains profitable, and it earns the right to have that support that it has. And you know, I think what it did was it earned the right to be part of that bigger connected entertainment strategy, and that's what keeps it in the game. I think deep pockets or otherwise, in terms of owners, you know, it's down to businesses to be creative, be innovative, be imaginative. That's what keeps you in the game, not necessarily, you know, just waiting for a bailout.
Can I just endorse that, Stuart? I'm sorry for cutting across you, but obviously I'm part of News UK, which is obviously owned by Mr. Rupert Murdoch. FM 104 is the most financially successful radio station, and has been for many years, and it's becoming a little bit more as the years go on. But I recently was part of a team that took over Q102, and they were number 5 in the marketplace in terms of listenership, and I won't go on to give you the number in terms of profitability, but in the last 2 years we've turned it into a feel-good music radio station, and we're a standalone brand now in terms of our profitability. So exactly what Pat said, you know, we can be part of a bigger group, we can be part of a parent with big deep pockets, but given globally what we're like, and you know, given the market, we're all tested and challenged to stand on our own 2 feet. And luckily, 104 and Q102 are standing on their own 2 feet now. So it's lovely to have a parent company at the background, but they're not normally that willing to run forward with their checkbook to help you out. You need to be making sense on your own as a business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure. Can I make one final point as well?
Of course,
in terms of, well, just in terms of maybe explaining why, in the context of TV advertising collapsing 40-50%, why I still say the business is in good shape. There's just 2 points to that, and it kind of supports what Margaret has said as well. This is not about owners, or this is not about anything. It's about the team in Ballymount. We're running a business that understands you have to earn it to spend it.
Yeah.
So we've never got ahead of ourselves. We've never spent other people's money. We've always stayed on top of our costs, which is fundamental of business. But also, it might be just interesting for some of your listeners today. We have a model that is all, like I said, the big Christmas earlier about supply and demand. We were very lucky that a huge number, lucky is probably the wrong word, it wasn't unhelpful that the big ticket sports content and big premium content items moved out as well, because of the way we account for those big items, they hit your P&L when they run. So yes, our business has lost lots of revenue over these couple of months in the pure TV business, but equally a lot of costs has moved out of the second quarter because Six Nations wasn't finished, the Champions League has been postponed. So I probably should just be clear that the model has really helped us in terms of how we run the business. And look, the hope is that this will naturally police itself, and those events and therefore those big costs come back to the business, and the costs hit the P&L. They'll only come back when the world is kind of coming back to normal, by which time the ad market should be coming back. So that's probably important to explain that others aren't as lucky to have that type of model within their system in terms of managing costs and revenue.
Okay, got it. Just, it kind of does follow on a little bit, but maybe we'll go to Jack now. Media businesses, especially after this melee, there is an opportunity for media owners, Mags and Pat, as well as agencies and everything else, to look at mergers and acquisitions. I mean, that seems to be something that's likely on the cards. Maybe, Jack, you could just talk about that. Obviously, South Side, North Side in the news, and Mags and media.
Well, I mean, M&A activity has been fairly widespread certainly in Pat's sector over the last number of years. I mean, and that will continue to be a feature, I think, going forward. I mean, obviously, we had the announcement there a couple of weeks ago, Virgin Media and Telefonica stroke O2 in the UK. And, you know, obviously going back a couple of years before that, we had Virgin Media acquiring TV3. So, and, you know, you have Comcast Sky. I think you're going to see more of those kind of deals. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, at a global level, some of the OTT platforms, you know, like a Netflix or somebody like that might come under the hammer, or there might be an opportunist bid for one of those. But certainly at a local level, yeah, there's, you know, huge opportunity for M&A activity. The problem is who wants to buy and who's for sale. I mean, there's you know, I think a lot of publishers are probably, a lot of media companies are focusing on, you know, battening down the hatches, conserving cash. Now, unless something really attractive comes up, you know, I really don't see a huge amount of it, even though it's probably needed. I think there will be some casualties and there will be some fire sales, but nothing kind of, you know, at frothy valuations or, and, you know, we saw there last week, Maximum Media collapsing into examinership. You know, Maximum is effectively up for sale, I think, at the moment, and its lender, Beach Point Capital, is owed $6 million. Beach Point is not a publisher, and it'll want to make a return on the money that it lent. It provided venture debt to Maximum of $6 million or whatever it was, and ultimately, I would like to see that money come back in again. It's not a benevolent media baron or, you know, press baron in the old school sense. So it's so, you know, that's one business that I think that'll probably come on the market, and whether there's any buyers or not, I don't know. And it's been touted around, and you know, there was a sale process there towards the end of last year for some of its assets, and I don't think it got much interest. You know, I think there was a few people kicking tires and whatever, but nothing substantial. So, you know, if you look around, you mentioned north side, south side people. Again, you know, the freebie model has been kind of tried and tested before in this market, and you know, we saw with Metro a couple of years ago. And while it, you know, they had good circulation, I'm not too sure if the advertising market can sustain so many publications throughout the country. I mean, you know, you could argue that there are probably too many local, local and regional newspapers, probably way too many magazines, you know, so all that sector there is probably right for some sort of consolidation, whether it's, as I said before, of a Darwinian proportion, or whether it's done, you know, willingly, and you know, people actually getting together and pooling their business is a different story. But yeah, so I think there will be some activity in the marketplace, and you know, I would see, you know, huge opportunities for collaboration, whatever about merging. But I think there's, you know, everybody's in this boat, and we're all looking for a, you know, a smaller slice of the same cake. You know, in terms, when I say collaboration, and you know, could be a radio station collaborating with a newspaper, or it could be a TV station collaborating with a radio station, could be whatever. But I think we're going to have to look at new business models and ways of doing business in media, and obviously with an eye on making some sort of a return. But you know, it could be events, could be any number of different things. It could be online, could be. But I think there are huge opportunities for collaboration out there, and so that's, you know, where I see it at the moment.
But what about agencies, Jack? Are we going to see consolidation and mergers of agencies?
Yeah, well, there's a lot. You know, the reality here, Stuart, is that all the big agencies are part of multinational networks, and you know, they're reasonably well capitalized. The balance sheets are very strong. Now, having said that, yes, they will be subjected to the same kind of rules that apply across the global network. So if they're told to cut back, they'll cut back. If they're told to lay off staff, they lay off staff. But I mean, if you look at, you know, the WPP agencies, for example, or the Omnicom agencies here in Ireland, they're well funded, well capitalised, but they still are subjected to the group intercompany policies in terms of, you know, dividend payments, etc., etc. The smaller independent agencies are a different matter altogether. Some of them have just about recovered from the last downturn, and you know they have been profitable, but you know not hugely profitable over the last number of years. And you know I think they will struggle, and there are some exceptions to that. But I think if you're a small agency operating in the market at the moment, you know I'd be looking to, you know, maybe merge and you know, and I think there is an appetite for some sort of consolidation this time around. I was talking to one agency owner there the other day, and you know, I won't say which one, but you know, they would consider a merger. And you know, at this stage, they've been through this a couple of times before the downturn, and you know, everybody's getting a little bit tired, and you know, having to make. I mean, also the prospect that the economic cycles globally are getting smaller and smaller. So if we get out of all of this, say by the end of 2021, you know, there's a distinct possibility that, you know, by 2030 there will be another downturn. It may not be a black swan event like COVID, but it'll be, you know, an economic, more likely to be an economic downturn, given that most economies are going to be burdened with massive debts over the next number of years. So yeah, so going back to so what I was saying about the smaller agencies, yeah, I think there will be. I think there is a desire amongst certain agencies, but the problem with mergers, particularly in creative agencies, is you're talking about merging cultures, and you've been down this road before, and it's a very tricky thing to achieve. And you know, so not all mergers work.
Sure, accept that, but actually it's a great link for me to talk to Siobhan, because Martin Sorrell's leaked memo to the Telegraph might indicate that he is on the acquisition trail. I should explain who Martin Sorrell is. I think, Pat, you might have worked with Martin Sorrell.
Yeah, no, I certainly met him when I was a very young man, and he was instrumental in the DDF H&D business, bringing J. Walter Thompson in, which was probably the first time that one of the global players came to Dublin.
In fact, he's a finance man. He worked with Evelyn Sachs, and he was Morrison Charles Sachs, who started to acquire agencies through acquisition, and he never got the credit for it, he thought. And he bought a company, I think up in Birmingham or Manchester, who made shopping trolleys called Wire and Plastic Products, which is the WPP. Yeah. But Siobhan, he's in the news on this matter of mergers and acquisitions.
He is. The 75-year-old ad veteran. He's been in the business 50 years now. He's zooming from his Mayfair mansion all week against a lovely backdrop. He has a lovely panelled wall, and behind him on the wall are caricatures and cartoon drawings of himself from the wall to the floor. It's quite a vista when you look at it. But anyway, 75-year-old Martin has been popping up on Newsnight. He was on in City AM, the London newspaper. And what was interesting about him, before you go to, first of all, there's a leaked memo as well, add that into the mix. So there was a memo that was leaked allegedly to a Business Insider, in which Martin was writing to all of his staff, and basically subtext, there's gold in them hills, lads, so go out and find out as much information as you can about the distressed agencies and report back to me. Yeah. So he is on the acquisition trail. He's quite choosy though. He's very much focused on digital-led businesses, and that'll bring me actually something to both Mags and Pat to ask you about this whole digital technology in media. But so Martin is very much saying it's digital-led businesses. That's where his interest lies. But in agency land, he did single out Group M as part of the WPP business that he would be interested in acquiring. But as I said, he's got a staff out there looking for competitive intelligence. But also interesting, he was quite good on how he saw this landscape pandemic evolving. He uses the word catatonic, catastrophic, disastrous, you know, all good to kind of
Darwinian,
choking your cornflakes. But he was saying Q2 will be horrendous, absolutely a bloodbath. Q3, not much better, but less blood on the carpet. And then by Q4, a little bit of recovery seeping back in. So as I said, he used the phrase that John just said there, Darwinian culling. So he describes it as survival of the fittest. In agency land, production land, media owner land, it is now survival of the fittest. So but interesting, what I liked about what he was saying as well, he was talking about how companies that might have been edging their way into a much more digital proposition were now being forced to go at it full tilt, because that's the way media was changing. And Mags, I'd be interested from radio perspective here, you have to say, because I was looking at some listenership figures in the UK from Q1 for the Rajor listenership figures. And what caught my attention was 40% of listenership in the UK now is digital. And that's, if you compare it to here, it's a lot different. So I'm wondering.
Yeah. So digital, Siobhan, is really different in the UK because of DAB.
That's my point.
So it's a question about DAB, isn't that what it's about?
Yeah. So DAB hasn't really taken off in Ireland. I think for myriad of different reasons. I think we are a nature of people who are used to not used to massive change in terms of media consumption. If you look at something like Facebook and social media stats for all the different radio stations, so they're huge. So going away from your question about DAB, I think, sorry, to answer your question about DAB, first of all, Siobhan, I think Irish media consumers are Irish media consumers, and it'll take an awful lot to get them from one platform to another. So if you look at Irish radio consumption, and radio is obviously what my bread and butter is and has been for all of my life, the Irish radio consumer listens to 4.2 hours of radio a day in comparison to less than 2.5 in Europe and less than 3 in the UK. So Irish radio consumers love Irish radio. They also love Irish radio's social interaction. So if you look at, forgive me now for the plug, but FM 104's weekly Facebook numbers are 4.2 million. Weekly Facebook engagement numbers. So people who actually engage, like, comment, make a comment, like what FM 104 are doing on Facebook. If you look at any of the other national brands, and I'm not here to take a pot at any of the other national radio brands, but they're way less than 500,000. So 104 is doing something right in terms of it's younger, it's engaging with people, it's asking people to look differently from the FM signal and stuff like that. So that's all working really, really well for 104. I don't personally believe in DAB and that people are going to be able to, because I think local radio, I think Irish people are different. They love localism, they love Irishism. They're not really interested in what's the bigger picture out there, what LA radio station can they listen to or whatever. So I think that's where those numbers are coming from.
Is there not a concern though, I suppose, that perhaps, you know, radio owners as well would say with DAB there could be more audience fragmentation, which might not necessarily be a good thing?
No, I don't think we're doing it because we're afraid, Siobhan. I genuinely don't think we're doing it because we're afraid, because we're bigger and bolder. We're part of the wireless. We're part of TalkSport, Virgin. So so they're all digital. So we've looked at this, and I really don't think. I think that the Irish radio market is happy with what they're about. They don't really want the bigger DAB picture. And I think if we can focus on local radio, which is what I'm trying to do in Dublin, and obviously just trying to bring our brands out nationally as well, I think that's working, and that is working for us. I mean, as I said, look at our social numbers. So if people, you know, so DAB, I'm not a huge promoter of it in Ireland.
With all this new technology as well, I suppose, doesn't it make it easier for pirates? I mean, there's a lot, you know, pirates to come back on. Ironically, the BAI was set up to stop pirate radio, and yet now you've got more and more pirates available to listen to through the internet or whatever than ever before. How is that an issue for the industry, Mags, do you think, or how can that be tackled?
Well, I mean, I can't be two-faced. I started my life as a pirate. So but pirate.
That's where we met.
That's where we met, Pat, exactly. So pirate back in Sunshine Radio and Radio Nova, the old Radio Nova, and ERI, which was my alma mater, and all those other radio stations. When I brought you down to the Jazz Festival in Cork, Pat Kiely, I'm just thinking, and Stuart Fogarty, and Alan Cox and Liam MacDonald and anybody else.
1936, I think.
And I was in my school uniform. I just was doing a bit of that.
Yeah,
so we don't talk about
that.
Yeah. But no, but joking aside, I still believe local radio is king in Ireland, because I think that it's in our culture, it's in our nature, and I think that all the local radio stations, and not just 104 in Dublin, I'm talking about Highland Radio in Donegal, I'm talking about Kerry, I'm talking about, like, they've got nearly 50% market share, guys.
And so they do a great job, Mags, in their territory.
Absolutely. So I think if it ain't bust, why fix it? Really, Siobhan, is what I'm saying.
Okay, fair, yeah.
Same, just Siobhan, for one sec, just the same token applies then, Pat, to television. So we're into the Netflixes of this world. We're into subscription versus ad-free. The campaign, TV builds brands, showed a kind of a coming together of TV broadcasters. So is TV going to change in the same way? If there is an online broadcasting situation with radio, what's the situation with television? What's the future with TV?
I'm kind of listening with great interest to that conversation, thinking of the parallels with TV, because and there's a couple of things. The word digital is, I don't use the word digital anymore when it comes to talking about our business, because we're like, analog TV was switched off years ago. So we're an entirely digital business. I think pirate radio, and I start to think, look, clearly there's the analogy in the TV side is the old, because Siobhan mentioned the BAI objective of kind of controlling that. Well, another big objective was bringing opt-outs, TV opt-outs, into a regulatory environment, and that hasn't happened. So many ways it's a free for all in television, because anybody can set up a TV business and do a deal directly with a platform, be that Sky, Virgin Media. So on the digital side, that's one perspective. I think when you ask about Netflix, the other word I was hanging on was the Irishness and local. In our world, we'd call that relevance, and I think it's what's relevant, which is the success of the Highland radios and the Radio Kerry. What's relevant to that radio listener, you can see in the power of those listenership. And for us, relevance is everything from being, live in the Department of Health with the press conference today, but then quickly bringing somebody to some other place that is as relevant to them, even if it's a Love Island or a Coronation Street or a Man United football match. So it's getting that relevance right. The Netflix, I get asked this quite a bit. And I remember when I stepped into the role, which is interesting, stepping out, I was told, what are you doing? What are you doing that now? Sure isn't all the money in, Netflix, and sure is not where you should be going. And actually, Virgin Media, Liberty Global were the first to do a deal with Netflix. Like, we brought Netflix in as a partner for them. So actually, I've been entirely had a vested interest with Netflix's progress in Ireland, because it sits alongside the Virgin Media TV channels as part of what I said earlier, this wonderful connected entertainment business that is Virgin Media. So it's sitting alongside those businesses, and John said it, is that the next step to the OTT guys? I would have said about Netflix at the time, way back. I said, look, people don't realize how limited that catalog is. And I think it's taken a pandemic for people to realize that actually it is finite. And it's like any of our record collections or book collections, you kind of very quickly realize if you spend a lot of time with it. Whereas actually, so the symbiosis between OTT, be that Netflix, Disney Plus, which is the absolute going down a bomb in my house. The best purchase during the pandemic, was the subscription to Disney Plus. Yeah. So, but you can see that all of these are just providing other options. What it's done for us in TV land is continually brought people to the TV. And that is a wonderful, because that's the high street. And for us, while we're on that high street, the more tenants we bring onto that high street, and if Netflix is on the high street, and somebody pops into Netflix and comes out, they're more often than not popping back into us, and that's what's worked brilliantly for our business. So look, I think sitting alongside it, as long as we've got the right content strategy, and I think that's what's key. We need to stay relevant and get that mix between local and international.
But you're advertising dependent. You don't get any share of the license fee?
No, and that's, look, what we have learned, and what I think I've particularly driven over the last 5 years is to just forget about all that and to start, looking forward, not back. Not be looking at Siobhan, the only point I was going to make is that, our business was never developed on the basis of getting license fee funding. I think it's a different discussion to talk about what RTE does or others do with license fee. That's another conversation of the debate that I'd gladly take part in. In terms of our business, we recognize that we have there's a value in growing our viewership, which we've done extraordinarily. We booked all international trends. The free-to-air TV business in Ireland on Virgin Media's watch has grown, unlike virtually every other market. And we've done that by being increasingly relevant. And then on the commercial side, the guys have done a phenomenal job in terms of diversifying revenue. So spot, display, advertising, whatever you want to call it, 5 years ago was probably 95% of our business. Now we probably have it down to less than 70%. And that diversifying that model has been an all important. And that's just within VMTV. I said it earlier, the critical thing for media owners is how are they collaborating with other businesses? John talked about media owner collaboration. Well, actually, it's probably bigger than that. Media owners need to think about what other businesses, and thankfully for the Virgin Media television business,
that Bill's Brands TV commercial, I think, was produced by Virgin, wasn't it?
Yeah, good point. Part of our revenue diversification was providing creative solutions, because it always felt like a big barrier. Doesn't this sound like an age-old story? Oh, TV is expensive, real barrier to entry. Well, actually, we've had to kind of cut through that and demonstrate, working with agencies, by the way, as well as directly with advertisers, that we can provide a creative solution. And brilliantly, the team in Red Hot Creative, which is part of the Virgin Media television business, they won a pitch to do the new TAM TV promotion. I was only saying to somebody recently, it has become all the more powerful by them doing what I suggested in the first instance we should have done, which is put all the TV brands at the bottom. If anyone has seen the latest communication, it talks about TV in terms of the great job that TV does. And it's that lovely, it's actually one of the actors from Red Rock, funnily enough, is the name, plays the lead. And he calls out all those classic lines and highlights the fact that only TV can make brands famous. Simple as that. There's no other medium has been able to make brands as famous as TV can.
Well,
for the first time, Max, you're on mute there. We can't hear you. So for the first time ever, for the first time ever, the TV industry, I have to say this, got its act together and work collaboratively. And
it's an example.
That's the nub of this argument.
It's an example. It is an example of collaboration. And in fact, Pat, just because Mags is going to say this now, the commercial opens with today's bread today, which is Brennan's, which is radio. Oh, Mr. Brennan is a classic radio story. But you're going to say something quickly. Is that what you're going to say?
Exactly. I mean, it's joking aside, Pat. It's media. All I think is interconnecting and interfacing and interdependent, really, I suppose. And I don't think, with all due respect, there's any one medium that's going to stand alone and say we're going to. But I do have a couple of examples of Mr. Brennan personally of Champion Sports, which is something that I set up many years ago with FM104, and we built a brand specifically on radio. But given, I suppose, if we're finishing up now, the lockdown comment that I'd like to make is that JNLR is stopped now because we can't do anything because of pandemic. But if we were to look at our listening streams and look at the numbers on our listening streams, FM104 is up nearly 40% in terms of our listening streams month on month. So, and Q102 is up 32%. So that doesn't equate to, and I'm not allowed to sell that to advertisers, but and it's not JNLR, but it's just a number that we should look at, and that should be remembered. And as I said, the other thing that I want people to take away with is the FM104 in terms of the brand has 4.2 million engagements this month, which is treble, quadruple what a lot of national radio stations have. So did you get the fact that I'm really proud of my two brands? Did that kind of
very much so.
And by the way, you never lost it.
Mags is spot on. I'll follow on from that from saying the point probably I was clumsily trying to make was that Mags TV, in fairness, through that ad and making the points that ad makes, which can do itself, is finally got its act together. Because to be fair to radio, to be fair to print, even the outdoor guys have done a much better job than television. So all I'm saying is it has probably taken a pandemic for TV to really get it back together. And I think that should set a tone. I've been saying recently, the "we're in this together" motto is no more relevant, is as relevant in the media industry as anywhere else. Because we've far too long, I agree with you, Mags, been trying to beat up on each other and get one man up ship within media sectors and cross media. Yeah. Maybe now is the time that we believe we're in this together and think on a bigger stage, because I hinted to it earlier. The other side of our live and local strategy that we developed over the last number of years was a global ambition for Irish media. So let's commission Red Rock, but let's not just make it for Ireland, let's make it for the world. And it went on to become the best-selling TV export out of this market ever. So, you know, what can we do as a combined media industry that doesn't just address the challenges of the pandemic, but actually possibly seizes the huge opportunity? Brexit is slowly but surely coming back into the news. We, post-Brexit, become the only English-speaking country in Europe. What an opportunity that is for media owners and content creators. So, you know, with you, Mags, I think, you know, we start thinking about what this crisis throws up in terms of opportunity for the industry going forward.
But I think we as an Irish media don't do ourselves any favours to stand up and be counted. You know, Irish radio, like I said, 4.5 hours average listening. You know, that's massive in terms of the European counterparts, and we just need to stand up and talk about it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Max, but I'll just go back to one point, and I'm going to make myself, maybe John McGee will come in here, but the whole licensing issue is an issue. If I want to, I shouldn't have a license in order to broadcast radio or indeed television. If I want to do wall-to-wall Britney Spears and there's a fella in the bank who'll give me the money to go and do it, I should be allowed to go and do it. The licensing is the issue, and that's restrictive. And it's a bit of control that I think is unnecessary. Criticism of
well, currently I'm in the process of renewing
the
license, so I'm not going to say anything.
Jack, do you want to say anything?
Well, I don't think we need any more radio stations.
Neither do I.
No, I mean, the market is probably oversaturated at the moment. I mean, as Siobhan mentioned, you know, there are pirate stations popping up, and some of them are on DAB, you know, using DAB+. The cost of entry is a lot less lower. Some of them are moving online. So I don't think the solution is more radio stations. I mean, the stations that are there are finding it very difficult at the moment in terms of competing for the slice of the advertising cake that is going increasingly more and more towards the digital behemoths, Google and Facebook. So, you know, what effect is issuing more license for radio stations? That's not the solution. I think that, you know, the industry needs to knuckle down now for the next couple of years, and like it did, you know, back in between 2008 and 2013, there was you know, a lot of pain taken then, but there's also a lot of innovation, and radio, to its credit, you know, has been a powerful, enduring medium for many households throughout the country. You know, 80% of adults, you know, watch or listen to a radio station on a daily basis. You know, radio has delivered news to local communities. It's been a very powerful force in Irish society for many, many years. And you know what? It's free. And a lot of people overlook that. You know, I think that's at a time when people are looking to make money and from digital subscriptions and whatever. And, you know, the great thing about radio is that it's free. And, you know, TV, Sairview is free. Obviously, Pat would like us to buy more Virgin Media subscriptions and whatever. But, you know, I think media, broadcast and radio here in Ireland has served the Irish nation very well. But that's clearly evident over the last 2 months, where, you know, the nightly news bulletins on Virgin Media at 5:30 and on RT at 6 o'clock have been outstanding, you know, and they've kept the nation informed. And you know what, that's been all free, you know, so that's a powerful thing that we overlook, you know. And I know RTE gets criticized for the license fee, but I do believe passionately in the need for public service broadcasting in Ireland. I know Pat does as well, and he actually, Virgin Media does that without any license fee, you know. So, you know, there is a case, and the radio stations do, all the local radio stations they play a vital role in public service broadcasting.
But John, isn't that that's a broader point though, what you've just said? That
it is, yes, but I mean,
all the radio stations are doing good public service broadcasting. Virgin Media is doing it night in, night out with current affairs. So is there a broader point moving forward? What is the definition now of public sector broadcasting? What is the meaning of it?
I've been saying this for years. I mean, we need to redefine what public service means in the digital age, right? This is 2020. It's no longer, you know, shouldn't be just confined to RTE solely, because the reality is lots of newspapers around the country are providing a public service, lots of radio stations around the country. So, you know, whether that's, you know, calling the license fee something else, or, you know, I think going back to Pat Rabbitt's days, it was a media household charge or whatever, you know, where we could fund by grants or by whatever means, you know, media owners that supply and that have a public service content remit, whether that's through broadcasting or whether it's in print or whether it's online. I think there's a very strong case to be made.
Yeah.
I think the good news is just to, you know, a lot of you are probably aware that in the dying days of the last government, and in fairness, and probably recognising, Siobhan, the fact that, you know, our point has been, where is the counterbalance in the argument that RTE is, you know, not being able to fund as much public service broadcasting? Well, what about what everyone else is doing? So to answer that, I think the Commission on the Future of Public Service Broadcasting was announced by the last government. We really hope that that carries through into a new government. Breen up in DCU is going to run it. You know, that's a great opportunity, I think, for this whole, that we welcomed that at the time, because it just feels like the right next forum to consider where this goes next. And, you know, look, I'm as big a supporter as anybody of what RTE been doing. I consume a lot of RTE as Virgin Media Television, side by side, both businesses in the TV world, you know, is doing a wonderful job. That's never the debate. The debate is probably, what is RTE? What are all the other things that RTE are doing that couldn't be described as public service, and what is the cross?
It's a much broader issue.
But the basic question is are 2FM a public broadcaster? Are they facilitating public broadcasting as much as somebody like Radio Kerry is, or less than Radio Kerry is? And that's the difference. So 2FM, and they're a very good radio station, but, you know, are they a public broadcaster given the fact that the criteria of which the license is based on? I don't think so. No. And I think it's been bust, and I think we have Pat Rabbitt and all our other ministers haven't been able to stand up and look at this. I mean, we all just need, and maybe it takes a pandemic to stand down and say, okay, what's everybody doing? What's everybody doing? But certainly 2FM is not a public broadcaster, given what Virgin do.
The history of 2FM, I mean, it was set up basically in response to the plethora of pirate radio stations, right?
Somebody like me,
So it's a whole raison d'etre no longer exists, and we now have a very thriving commercial radio sector. So I wrote a piece last year about, you know, I think it's time probably that I wrote in the Sunday Independent that, you know, 2FM is surplus to, you know, RTE's remit in terms of public service obligations, and it is, and I think it's something that I think should be looked at. It's not part of its public service. I'm
just conscious, Jack, we've 5 more minutes to go. I think the issue as well, and I don't want to have a go at RTE, because I mean, Pat, Mags, and we all, Siobhan, and we all have friends in RTE and everything else, and they employ a lot of people. They do get 200 million roughly from the state every year, which is an awful lot of money, nearly £250 million. And the difficulty with it is it goes back to the BAI licensing, Mags, if I can say that, is about government control. Because if this was Russia, that's what the Russian government would do with something like Pravda. So that's really the issue as well. Just very quickly, because we have 5 minutes, I want to go around very, very quickly. There are people watching from agencies, advertisers, and media owners. Can we just, in each one of us in a minute, just kind of give us a little bit of a future or a bit of advice, if you were saying to somebody, because a lot of businesses are suffering. I mean, some of us are fortunate and some of us are unfortunate, but a lot of media businesses are suffering. Mags, just give us 30 seconds.
I suppose it's all very different. You know, we need to not be afraid of change. I think in terms of management, the one bit of advice that I give to people is to let them on with it. You know, you know, we need to employ people that, I suppose my biggest challenge, Stuart, or all of you guys, is to create the atmosphere, the atmosphere and the ambience for people to get the best of them every single day. Now, it's a little bit more difficult when they're not in the office and we're on Zoom calls and all that sort of stuff. But I suppose that's the biggest challenge, is let your team on with it. Can I just say something about my charity for tomorrow? Am I allowed?
Absolutely. Yes, you can. As long as you don't mention Facebook. I'm
not going to mention my 4.2 million Facebook. Well, 4 million. No, joking aside, I'm a mom of two Pat knows this, of a 22-year-old and an 18-year-old. 18-year-old was due to do her leaving cert. So I got aware of a thing called Tribe, which is a charity of a couple of young lads from UCD and Trinity who set themselves up to try and help Jigsaw, which is a charity that's looking after young people's mental health. And I think that young people, in terms of, given how difficult it is for all of us to work in lockdown, how awful that leaving cert all of a sudden has gone from the 3rd of June to the 28th of July to, oh, sorry, we're not having it at all. That's all gone. So there's a huge amount of young people that are suffering. So tomorrow, Friday on the 22nd of May, FM 104 are doing a big fundraiser for Jigsaw. We've got people like Little Mix, Brezzy, the Coronas. The Corona's going to be interesting what they're going to say. But we've got various different people talking about various different mental health issues. And it's not big mental health issues like schizophrenia or the big issues. It's about social problems, eating disorders, and what the whole problem that the pandemic has brought. So if you can donate, please do.
Mind your noggin day this Friday, FM 104, am I right?
Thank you, guys. Yeah, perfect, Stuart. Thank you.
A few words of encouragement.
Great, Brian. Mind your noggin. Love it, Mag. Well done.
Right.
Thank you. Thanks, Pat.
30 seconds of encouragement.
I probably have said it already. Be proud of what we've achieved. You know, we achieve as an industry. You know, remarkable for a market this size. People by people. This is a people business. Mags and I. Yeah. Let's remember the great people we have around us. Trust, be increasingly trusting of each other, stop beating up on each other. And, you know, it probably goes no further than the pandemic team, which is we're all in this together. Think how we can all play on a bigger stage.
Okay,
yeah.
Jack.
Perfect, Pat.
Yeah. Obviously, don't stand still. You know, I think the industry needs to continue to demonstrate its value, its innovation. I think at this time, we need to also demonstrate to our clients, you know, how the industry and how advertising can work, and be relentless in your focus on client service. And that's what we're doing, doubling down and trying to help clients wherever we can. And it's, you know, they're grateful for it, because they're also suffering. So that's my advice.
Siobhan.
Keep calm, hold your nerve. This will pass.
And keep going. Keep calm.
Keep going. And work together. I mean, that's the one thing. I have loved the fact that everybody is collaborating more in these last 6 weeks, 9 weeks than I have seen in a long time working. And I think if that could carry on, if that collaboration and working together and helping each other could carry on, that would be great. But as I said, just keep calm, carry on. Sail a day in the month of May. That's my motto. And
sail a day. Brilliant.
Thank you. I do want to mention just very quickly, firstly, the poll, great results.
And mind your noggin as well on Friday. Great.
Thank you.
Very good results on the poll. Thanks very much indeed. So that's very helpful. I also want to mention Damien Ryan, who was looking in and talked about on the merger and acquisition side, that there are people out there from the UK who are looking at the Irish market, and with a new type of finance, which seems to be corporate venture capital, and indeed some public share offering, but maybe we'll get to that again. It's 2 p.m. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is a wrap. I do want to say that Margaret Nelson is somebody I know an awful long time as one of the kindest, most decent people in the business. So we wish you, FM 104, and your Facebook audience very well. Pat, wherever you go, you're a gentleman, and we all wish you well for 200 years. So we do absolutely wish you well. Regrettably, the other two will be back next week, and so we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye.
With, Mark McCann is the CEO of Oliver the Agency, and now, like Egypt, yes, we all say goodbye.
Best of luck.
Thank you very
Cheers,
much.
guys.
Guys,
Good job.
bye.
See ya.
Cheers. Bye, guys.
Bye, bye, bye.